everybody. I'm Michael Brown from Montgomery College Television, and I'm going to be your moderator today. We're on the Germantown campus. We're in the High Technology and Science Center building. We're actually in the lobby that connects the High Technology building with Globe Hall. So if you come in the upper level of Globe Hall, that's where we are. We're in that lobby. And if you're close by, you're watching online, please come on over. We've got more seats and we'd love to have you here. Now, Dr. Pollard is really excited to be hosting the first town hall of 2013. We had several successful town halls in 2012, and she is really excited about the schedule of town halls that we have set for the rest of 2013. Now, my job today is I'm sort of her sidekick. Dr. Pollard and I like to joke that I'm sort of the Scottie Pippen to her Michael Jordan. And believe you me, she is the Michael Jordan of town hall meetings. Nobody does it better. So my job is to make sure that she stays focused on your questions, one, and number two, that we get to as many of your questions, both here in the room and online, as possible. So to accomplish that, number one, if you're watching online, you have a question, send it in to townhall@montgomerycollege.edu. We've got folks back there collecting those questions and passing them off to me. And also, to make sure that we get to as many questions as possible, please try to keep your questions brief. And also, regardless of whether you're in the room or you're online, if you have a question, please identify yourself so that Dr. Pollard knows who she's answering. So, without further ado, here's Dr. Pollard.
Well, thank you very much, Scotty, Michael. I appreciate that. I'm delighted to be here doing this yet again. As we talked about earlier, we have done several of these in the fall semester. We're starting the spring semester off, and we'll have several more over the next several weeks as we move into this very active spring semester. I want to welcome each of you to this, and hopefully we'll have some good conversation. I got here maybe about 20 minutes ago, and the questions that had already been sent in, I've looked at, and we'll be prepared to talk about them over the course of the next hour. And if more come in, feel free to do that. Let me start off by addressing, though, one thing that I know is I got a call about a couple weeks ago, actually about a week ago, and I want to go ahead and address it because there was a great conversation to say, help us understand this. And it was about the ACES program. And they've been seeing a lot of announcement about the work that we've been doing in that regard, and I'm very excited about that program. The ACES program is unique in several ways. One, it's a partnership between three institutions, Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, and University of Shady Grove. In effect, what it is about is placing Montgomery College coaches into the high schools to help assist traditionally underrepresented populations in higher education. What I love about this program, it takes two of the areas I think are very important, intentional and deliberate, advising to a very specialized population, works within the context of the school to help them become college ready, and more importantly, works with those families. I had the opportunity last week to testify in Annapolis about this program, and I share with them my own story of being a first-generation college student. And I can recall my senior year of high school coming home after I had completed the FAFSA form, and telling my father I had done my part, that I needed him to complete his income information and put it on this FAFSA form so I could mail it in. And I remember my father, you know, those of you who've met him, he's very quiet, so it kind of takes him a little while to build up to the point, but he absolutely would not fill out that form, would not fill it out. And I was and I kept saying, Daddy, I got to get this in, the deadline date's coming. And he said to me, I don't understand why you need to know my income information. Now, and this is, you know, I'm his child, so I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to explain to you that I need your income information to qualify for financial aid. It wasn't until I went back to school and a counselor who had been working with me said, you know, helping me navigate the process that I didn't even understand, said, I'll call your father and have a conversation with him. And she called him. Now, there's a whole other subtext of that that's very important. Here's a man who was unemployed at that point, having to tell his daughter about his income. And how do you have that conversation in an environment where he saw in a very clear role what his expectations were to raise his family? So there's a whole lot going there. So this program I'm excited about because it's helping first generation, underrepresented folks in higher education while they're in high school so they can come to us better prepared, but more importantly, helping to work with those families to understand how to create agency, how to create capacity so that when they come to us and go on to get a baccalaureate degree, that they're successful for that route. So I'm very excited about the program. You'll be hearing more and more about it over the next couple of weeks as we start to get it up. We did a press conference last fall. We're working with MCPS to figure out the best strategy to connect with these young people. But we will be in 8 high schools this fall, serving up to 960 students, I believe, that we've planned for. And what's important, this is a budgeted priority we've identified. It's directly linked to our strategic plan. It does not impact adversely other programs within the institution. So I'm very excited about what's going to be happening here. And I also think, in a very significant way, it's building a pathway, and it's allowing us to be very intrusive. If we do it very well, my goal is that in 3 years, right, Dr. Beverly, we're going to be in every high school in Montgomery County trying to serve this population. So I wish you all, hope that you all will help support the program as we launch it. And if you have questions about it, let me know. So that's my intro. That being said, I turn it over to you.
All right. We have any questions in the room to start out? Well, it's a good thing we have the online questions. All right. We recently received an email at our town hall email account from Daniel Hirschhorn. He's a part-time faculty member who teaches Intro to Business.
Yeah.
He shared how his students design business marketing plans for fictitious nonprofits, which gives them real-world experience that could help the community. He sent us this story as an example of how he, an individual faculty member, is actualizing our mission at Montgomery College.
Love it.
In a written message to the college community, you asked everyone to send you ideas about how they're doing just that. How exactly would you like the college community to share those ideas with you? And what do you plan to do with those ideas?
Well, there's what I love. I remember reading his email, and I love that. And I hope that people will continue to send them. You can send them to President at Montgomery College. You can send them to this inbox for the town meeting. Whatever's the best way to get it to me, because those stories we use in lots of different ways. One is that I use them when I'm actually doing advocacy in the community. I talk about how we're making real the mission of Montgomery College. I use that whether I'm in Annapolis at the county council. We also send every week to our foundation board members, to our board of trustees, what we call a weekly update. And in that, we oftentimes use those stories as mission moments, how we are actualizing the mission of the college. So here are folks who advocate for our institution, who raise money for the institution, and sometimes they can see us in very broad perspectives. I love to take the opportunity of making it personal. You call it the English teacher in me. I love the story. A story is powerful. So please continue to send those to me. We use them quite frequently. As a matter of fact, I'll be using a few this weekend when I'm going to go attend the Black, Brown, and College Bound Conference in Tampa. And we're going to be talking about success rates of Black and Brown students and how to help them be more successful in higher ed. I'm actually going to be using a story regarding one of our new programs here, the Boys to Men program. Those of you who are familiar with that, at the Rockville campus, I believe they're in, they have had an amazing retention rate of young men. I think they have 41 students, and Beth, I know I'm blanking on the actual numbers. I think they have 41 students who participate in this program. Of that, they have retained either students who are coming back to Montgomery College, graduated from Montgomery College, or transferred at over a 90% rate. I mean, this is unbelievable looking at the success rates of Black and Brown men at Montgomery College in general. But here's a very intrusive story, a program that helps people understand how to navigate college. And what I love about that program is that it came to us as simply as someone talking about how they're making the mission real. So send them in to me. I use them all the time, and will continue to do so in the future. Did I hit all the points of that question?
I think so.
All right.
All right. Okay, we have a question from the audience, and Dr. Pollard, I've been asked if we could have you speak up just a little bit.
I'm sorry.
I think the microphone is kind of,
Yeah,
there we go.
It's lost in my folds.
Yeah.
All right, is that better? Oh, it's when I move to, do I need to stand still? All right. I like that
Thank you.
gear
We do-
you got.
we do
Where
too.
you get that from?
Got it from the MC Raptors baseball team.
I need one of those.
I'm Justin Sawyer. I'm a pitcher. I'm a sophomore pitcher on the team. We got 2 weeks till our first home game, so I was wondering if it would be possible if we could get a working scoreboard up at our field. It's been over a year since we had one, and we'd really like one. We put a lot of work in to, make the field look nice and presentable. and we think that a scoreboard would be a really nice addition. So.
Well, thank you, Justin. I don't know where we are in that process, but I'll find out. I would concur with you. I've been to several of the baseball games at Germantown and at Rockville last year. I also went to several soccer games, and as someone who considers herself a little bit of a sports, you know, I kind of understand sports better than the average person, I think. But I walk in and I can't figure out what the score is. So I'm with you on that. And let me find out where we are in that process. I suspect it has something to do with money, but let me find out, and I'll be happy to follow up with you. If you make sure before you leave that wonderful woman in the back room with the gray scarf on has your contact information, I'll make sure I let you know that. Or I'll let the coach know as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. But we got to have a deal. I need one of those shirts.
That's nice. I want one of those too.
Double X, be nice, because I like to have a little room, so when I get up, fired up, okay? Thank you, Justin.
By the way, it's been pointed out to me that Justin, correct? Yeah. Is on the council?
The Germantown Campus Council.
The student council here.
Good.
So,
Love that.
Germantown Campus
Council. Very good, Justin.
So he's giving his time on the field and also.
So he's a scholar, an athlete, and a civically engaged student. Now you just made my heart happy right there. So nice to meet you, Justin.
That's the trifecta there.
That is, exactly.
Anybody else in the room? Here we go.
Hello, I'm Kelly Rudin, and I teach history here. And I was wondering if you could address global education, your vision for it, and what's being done college-wide and in terms of faculty and in terms of getting students back and forth to other places.
Thank you, Kelly. I got a little concerned when I saw the apparatus you brought with me. I didn't know what the question was going to be. So I'm glad to know that it's just about that, because this is an issue which I have some passion about, as many of you know. I believe in the basic premise. A lot of folks are, we know the literature tells us that community college students are under-engaged or underrepresented in global studies across the country. They don't participate or don't have access quite often to exchange programs, study abroad programs at the level at which students at four-year colleges have that experience. For me, why this becomes a very big issue is that those students then are ill-equipped oftentimes and really in a lot of ways underserved and allowing them to compete in a global workforce. I remain more and more convinced, and I see one of our wonderful Alumni Association Board of Governor members and also part-time faculty member who teaches business. We think about the reality about what our students will have to when they complete their experience here with us. When they step into the world of work, it is all about them being able to be competitive in the workforce, in a workforce that is no longer just locally based. It is a workforce that allows them to, and will oftentimes demand, that they have competency in intercultural relations, that they understand how the marketplace works in other places, how they're able to design and be effective in developing business products or services, programs, whatever, to deliver in that context. For me then, it's about helping those students have that experience, and how can we do that both in terms of globalizing our curriculum so that they have that experience while they're here, but also creating opportunities that they can participate in study abroad programs, internships at the global level, whatever the case may be. These are very important things. I would also offer, there's something very personal about this. You've heard me talk about the professional benefits for those students. For me, it's also the personal experience of going into a different culture, having a different experience, and figuring out how to navigate that. For me, I had never traveled abroad until I was a faculty member, and at that time I had the opportunity to go to Beijing and present at a conference about a professional development experience I had developed, and I can recall distinctly getting off the plane. Now, here's someone who is fairly articulate. Most days I'm a pretty good reader, and I'm able to navigate life. Walking off the plane in Beijing and being completely immobilized because I didn't know where the bathroom was, right? And this is the most basic sense. And then being so dependent for a week on this tour guide who's helping us navigate this country. And I never forgot that experience. I thought about students who come to us from other shores, and they're walking into our campuses, they're walking into our country. How do they learn to navigate that? How do we create wayfinding for them? What does it feel like to be that uncomfortable? Because I'm a highly educated person, and I was dependent on this beautiful young lady who walked around with the umbrella for a week to help us be able to navigate Beijing. That to me I remember distinctly. So for us, this idea of having that experience for our students, for our employees, you know, I think that's a very important thing to do. I'm very excited. Last week while we were in India, we spent some time talking, or now is it last week or the week before? I lose track of time. We spent some time with Jindal Steel, and in that, the president of this company, conglomerate, provided us with internship opportunities for students in our engineering program. First community college in the country that they have allowed to come into their company. We were able to, how many students they're going to accept? 6 students that they're going to help, they're going to provide some level of compensation. Students have to pay to get there, but they're going to provide compensation and experience for 6 weeks, I believe it is, for these young people to come and study and look at a developing part of the world and figure out how this can help them better their career opportunities. That made me really happy. So I think for me, we've got to figure out and have a conversation how we structurally do this at Montgomery College. That's a very big issue. As we're looking at the academic redesign, one of the things I share with Dr. Pearl, there's all these things that kind of hang on the periphery, but we haven't figured out how to institutionalize them at a level that we look at issues of equity and fairness. Global Studies is one. Honors is another one. There are all kinds of programs like that that we need to figure out how that fits in the structure so that they're not lost when the organization creates this new model. So, and I'm very excited about the NEH grant, the challenge grant we have that's looking at globalizing the curriculum in 3 countries, I believe it is, from India, China, don't tell me the third one, India, China, Salvador. Oh, Salvador. That is very exciting. How do we begin to do that work, and how do we make sure that our students are engaged, our faculty and staff are engaged, and how do we continue to raise the money for the challenge part of the grant, which is part of my job and some other folks to do. So thank you, Kelly, for the question.
All right, we have a question from the web from a student. Dear Dr. Pollard, I am a student at Montgomery College, Rockville campus, and I'm just wondering what your plans are for keeping the college safe. With all the school incidents lately, a lot of schools and colleges are buffing up their security. I currently feel very safe at MC, but I also know our security lacks in some aspects, such as weapons. I personally dealt with the security staff once before due to an accident involving me and another student in a parking lot on campus, and the security staff was very professional and knew exactly what they were doing. What are your plans for the security of our college, and how do you plan to implement the improvements if necessary? Thanks. An anonymous student.
Well, thank you, anonymous Rockville student. Typically, I don't do anonymous, as you all know, but I will in this case because I think it's an important question to be asked, and certainly I understand the motivation for it. Let me start by saying, first off, we have phenomenal campus safety folks. They work tirelessly on behalf of our campuses. I recall the incident we had a couple of months ago. The reason we were able to resolve it so quickly is because our campus safety officers work the campus. You talk about community policing. They're walking around all the time. They know where students hang out. They understand and they watch the population in a way that's very important. So I celebrate them. But I also know that they have some unique challenges. We are, in large part, in many of our campuses, adjacent to communities. So how does that work when we have people? Our campuses are open. The thoroughfares, and people walk in and out. How do we begin to monitor that? How do we also continue to acquire the talent that we need in these positions? Probably every week, when I look at our personnel actions information, we have vacancies in campus security. So trying to get people who are willing to work 3rd shift, who want to work 2nd shift, who are able to double up and be active on campus, that's often the challenge. But I know for sure is that we're committed to ensuring that our students and our employees are safe and the people who visit the campus. So I think a couple of things are important with this. One is that we're in a constant review of our emergency practices here. We have a phenomenal, I continue to be impressed with him, emergency planning gentleman who handles all of this work, and he looks at things from weather on campus to incidents across other places, how that might impact us. We spend a lot of time thinking about how do we provide training, how do we ensure professional development is there for those folks who are on the front line, and more importantly, how do we ensure that members of the college community also take responsibility for their safety as well. That means making sure that you're on MC alert. Make sure you follow the various guidelines as they relate to how you communicate information. The incident that happened a few months ago was powerful, that a group of students heard something, and instead of just kind of sitting on that information, they walked to campus safety. So that lets me know a couple of things. One is that we're doing some good job about educating people about process. They felt safe and comfortable enough to go to our campus safety officers, and our campus safety officers knew our campus and our population well enough that they were able to go out and figure out the situation in a matter of a half an hour. That to me says we're doing some things right. We're constantly in the process of assessment. We'll continue to do that. And I also think as we watch the demography and how the context changes in Montgomery County, we'll sit down and figure out what are the issues that we have to respond to. But I feel we have a good system in place that talks to the responsibilities of our campus safety officer, to other people who support them, and certainly to our employees and students about being informed. Thank you, anonymous Rockville student.
All right, we have a question from here in the room.
Thank you. Diane Cockrell, tennis playing reference librarian.
You better go, girl.
Very few. Already Dr. Rai has challenged me, so we won't go any further.
You got him. You got him.
Question with regards to all these partnerships, collaborative efforts the college is making with MCPS and University of Shady Grove, et cetera. Where do you see the library's role in all this? Because obviously with regards to all the new programs, educating our students, of course, all the research assignments they get, how do you see our role in all this? Because
I love that question. It is significant. And I think the part that's interesting about that is I need the libraries to tell me that role. I'm very excited that we finally hired a college-wide director for the libraries, Tanner, who Tanner's is incorrect. I've been very impressed in the conversations I've had with him and his experience. But more importantly, here's the beautiful part about this. Libraries are changing. I can recall when I was at the College of Lake County, our librarians at that time reported to me directly or indirectly through a dean, and I sat down with them. We were talking about redefining what a library is or does. The library, in effect, has to look, it becomes this learning information area that is beyond this quiet space that people think you sit down and read a book. It's really these people who are curators of knowledge. They're trying to help people understand how to navigate information technology. How do you look at information literacy in a very different world where we have access to anything all the time? I mean, the other day I'm sitting here talking to Miles, and he wanted to know who the 4 presidents were on Mount Rushmore. I didn't know off the top of my head who the presidents were. I know, don't say anything. I didn't know, and this is because he was fascinated with the Martin Luther King. He said, so he's in stone. Well, who's in stone at Mount Rushmore? And I thought, hey, how do you even know about Mount Rushmore? But he wanted to know that. So and I said, well, baby, I don't know that. He said, well, Mama, let's look it on the computer. So he got my iPad and wanted to know how to spell Mount Rushmore to type it in, so he could say, oh, Mama, click on this one so you can just see pictures. All I need to see are the pictures. And I'm thinking, hey, this kid is 6. Well, he just turned 6, and he's telling me how to navigate information in a way to have access to it. That, to me, is going to be the evolving role of libraries, if I had my 2 cents about it. It's about helping students navigate all the information is there, how to create spaces where they come together and study that information, and then how to help them discern what's good information and not. Just because it's on Wikipedia, although I know there's a great study out about the accuracy of Wikipedia, but just because Wikipedia can't be your only source, I think, for information. How do you triangulate that in a way that becomes useful? I have somebody created a Wikipedia page on me. I didn't know this. So I'm reading this. I said, I need to go see if the information is accurate, because that to me is a very important part of what the evolving role of libraries, I think, will be. And I'm almost of the opinion, do libraries become called something different? I don't know that, before anybody, I'm not asserting that, but because in my mind, there's a different construct of what libraries will be doing. So do we have to change the imagery and the narrative by inserting something different that people think about? I don't know that, but I look forward to the librarians and the library staff telling me that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
All right, we have another question from here in the room.
All right.
Hi, Dr. Pollard, Mary
Hello,
Robinson.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you for your conversation on technology, which leads to my question. Technology is an important part of our strategic plan. How do you see us staying at the forefront of technology for pedagogical purposes in the classroom, and that we're not, falling behind? In other words, will the technology component of the strategic plan be live? Will it be ongoing? Will we be constantly visiting that component to ensure that we are abreast of technology?
I thank you, Dr. Robinson, because that's a very important question for us as an institution. Someone often offered, a group, two people, offered a critique of me. And one of the critiques they offer is I use the word sense of urgency too much. And I was kind of like, I said, well, I'm actually going to take that on in my state of the college, just so y'all know. Because I think it's an important that you have to say, what's with the sense of urgency? And for me, it is because of the rapid changes that are happening to us and that are happening so quickly in our society. And a lot of that is driven by technology. I mean, this idea for us, I can recall the rise of online classes when I was teaching. And I remember there were so many of us who scoffed. Who's going to learn in an online environment? We're not going to do that. They failed miserably. And who would have predicted 10 years later that we have whole schools that are simply online institutions, that we have people who can earn multiple degrees in an online environment and be competitive in the workforce? I mean, let's be very honest about that. It's sometimes more competitive than our face-to-face institutions. So I was like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. So then this whole thing about MOOCs came up. So, there's a few of us who kind of said, pshaw, that won't happen. That's a great idea. You bring these people. And then the American Council on Education 2 weeks ago decided to give these folks credit for these classes and say they can be transferable. And I thought, now that happened in less than 6 months, right? So this idea of how technology is impacting the classroom, how do we continue to use it as a tool, though, right? How do we continue to look at it as a way to really redefine what learning is? How do we think about what cognitive science is teaching us about how people learn and how technology can be a part of that? How do we look at analytics to help us be much more thoughtful about what we know about our students? I asked Dr. Beverly, she's leading our college enrollment management team, and I said, help me understand, I'd like to see a profile, it just hit me one day, of a student who is unsuccessful at this institution, a non-persister at 15 credit hours, 30 credit hours, 45 and 60. I want to know, based on the analytics of our institution, what do we know about them? What makes them decide? Because how do we then design intrusive advising to help that population be more successful? How do we sort of think about what we need to do and how can we use technology? Social media could also be a tool. So for me, I am convinced about that. I just sat down with Dr. Mills this last week, and we were talking about this. How do we encourage that? But for me, what happens in the classroom has to be faculty driven. It has to be coming from a group of faculty who say, I'm committed to this, I want to study it. I'm not saying we have to embrace everything, but more importantly, how do we sit down and discern what's being done? So we could have, at some point, I think a developmental education course, whether it be reading, writing, or math, where we might offer it in a face-to-face environment. We might offer it in an online environment. We might offer it in a hybrid environment. We might offer it in a MOOC. All right, we might do any of these different ways to meet a student where they are and allow them to be successful. But the reality at the end of the day is that we have to sit down and not be afraid of the technology and figure out how to manipulate it for us in a way that works best. So we're very committed to that. We committed resources to it when we do our budgeting every year. We've got to sit down though and figure out how to be smarter with technology. I was very excited to see your project that you got the grant for, how you're trying to look at different apparatuses and using them in the classroom. Those to me are very important, but we also got the converse of that, thinking about accessibility issues, right? And how do we make sure that we have the appropriate support, right? That's really, because it does no good for us to buy X piece of new software and we find out that legally we can't use it because it's not accessible, and more importantly, we don't have people who can support you when you're working in the classroom with it. So it's a comprehensive package for me that we have to look at. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, our next question is an online question. We have about 30 minutes to go, so we're hoping to get to a lot more in the time we have left. This one is from Tammy Peary, professor at Germantown. I'm going to paraphrase this because it's kind of a lengthy question, so I'm going to try to save us a little time.
All right.
As one of the smallest campuses, or as the smallest campus, Germantown frequently finds that we have to struggle to have resources allocated to us to accommodate our growth. With lots of development in the upper end of the county, Frederick, Clarksburg, Damascus, and so on, Germantown has seen a huge influx of students, and we often find that we don't have enough staff, faculty, and administrators to serve them. Nonetheless, decisions often appear to be made based on overall size, leaving our smaller campus spread thin to meet growing demands. She cites a couple of examples of departments on Rockville that have more staff members and similar student enrollment as they do here at Germantown. She also cites an example from Tacoma Park. So to wrap it up, she wants to know, how can the college better balance these inequities and prioritize staff and faculty for Germantown?
So, Tammy, thank you for the question. First, I'll start off by saying go Clarksburg. As someone who lives in the northern part of this county, I am uniquely aware of the issues that she's presenting. We happen to be building a house here, and you would not know that there's a recession in Clarksburg, because if you walk into the housing center where they have 9 models that they're showing, our person who sold us the house, she has sold in the last 2 months, I believe, 30 houses. Now, just to let you know, that means that there are folks who are coming in who have families, and they are moving into Clarksburg, and many of them are going to be coming to the Germantown campus for classes. One of the big issues, so the numbers that she present, it's a compelling case. Someone asked me this similar question a couple of town meetings ago. Actually, I think it was from the Germantown campus as well. This is a very big issue, and this is endemic of institutions that grow campuses as extensions. And I shared with you all at that meeting, I had a similar experience in California, where we were a 2-college system, and there was the first college, Chabot College, that started, and then the college, they decided to go on the other side of the hill into the Valley of Livermore, and as a result of that, they started an extension site, and then they grew this extension site into a location and finally became a campus, and then this campus had hustle. And we were working, and grew exponentially over the last several years. But the problem is, when you grow things that way, you never appropriately build the infrastructure. So you kind of do it as an add-on model. So you know, and those of you who are in business, when you start, I love Massage Envy. I go to the one in Frederick. And so the other day I just happened to say, I wonder if I could, because you know they're building a new town center in Clarksburg. I said, I wonder if I could get some investors to build a Massage Envy in the Clarksburg, right? So I went online to look at Massage Envy, right? And then they had on here franchise opportunities and what you would do. And after I saw how much it cost, I changed my mind. But what I thought was amazing were the way in which they described what you needed to have in order to start the franchise, right? You had to have this amount of square footage. You need to have these numbers of massage therapists. You have to have this number of support people. I mean, literally, in order to get the franchise, right? We don't do that in higher ed. We don't say we're going to go start a new campus, and this is what you have to have in order to start a new campus. What we end up doing is saying, oh, well, you know, they hustling over here in Germantown, so we'll add 1 more person in. Or they're growing somewhere, we'll add a couple more. We never fully build the infrastructure in a way that allows it to be competitive or at least equal to that of the peer campuses. So as a result of that, we're addressing that very systematically. One is that the whole idea of one college hiring, a lot of people are kind of like, whoa, why are you doing this? This is exactly the reason why. Instead of thinking about the fact that DeRionne retires or leaves the organization in X department, the idea and that automatically X department is going to have this position refilled because of what I left. The position doesn't belong to a department, it belongs to the institution. So where does the institution need that position most? We did the same thing as we looked at budgeting this year. For the first time, we moved to a one college budgeting process. Now, mind you, there's a whole lot of things we still got to get fixed about this. But how do we start to look at alignment? How do we ensure that if this is going to be, as an institution, the size of a department, how do we ensure that there's consistency in terms of the resources that are provided to these departments? And more importantly, how do we start to budget in a way that allows us to grow and even catch up in some areas? And I would also argue to the third initiative that we're working on in that regard is the academic redesign. That really kind of is what started a lot of this for me, besides the fact of really talking about the common student experience. How do students experience us across campuses? How do we look at issues of equity as well? How do we ensure that a dean who has X number of departments that has this number of people, how do we ensure that there's some equity for that dean as it relates to this other campus? How do we look at department size and support? So that's what the work of that task force is doing. I happened to saw, I think on Friday, the 4 models that they're getting ready to take out into the college community for discussion. I can't wait to hear how folks respond to this. And I gave my feedback to someone. I said, well, this one looks, it kind of makes sense to me. This one I'm not quite sure about. This one is very exciting. And this one, okay, help me understand. So that's going to happen. The same thing, folks are going to be able to give their feedback. I think in March they're going to go out and do these open forums. But for me, this is exactly the issue that we're trying to address and be much more systematic about it. Will we ever get to a place that when you want to create a Montgomery College next campus, that we have the configuration of what that needs to be, kind of like my Massage Envy franchise? I don't know that, but I think we have to be more deliberate and stop thinking about things primarily from a campus orientation and start thinking about them from a student orientation, but also looking at issues of equity.
Any questions in the room? Okay, we'll take another online question. This is actually a redo from the last time because some information has changed.
Okay.
It's from Amanda Stroud, and she wants to know, why isn't the college closed officially during spring break?
Oh, that's a good redo. And this is something I had to learn, because when Amanda asked the question last time, I said, I don't know why we're not closed during spring break. And come to find out, there's a whole policy issue with this. We had a board policy, I don't remember the number, I'm sure Dr. Kane would if I asked him, that speaks the number of days the college can be closed. There's a certain number, I think it's 14. So we had already identified the 14 days that the college will be closed over the next year, and there was no way to kind of go back and change that. Well, we are changing that for next year. We have to change the academic calendar some, but we will be closed as an institution next year during spring break. That's very exciting. That was something that came as a byproduct of some of our negotiations. But more importantly, we're going to have to navigate a few of the holidays in order to figure that out. My son couldn't understand why we weren't closed on President's Day the other day, and I had to explain to him that my school is different than your school. So there are some differences there. But hopefully, Amanda, you'll be happy to know that for next year.
Okay, we have a question from here in the room.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Katie Mount, the Chair of Counseling at Germantown. I would just like to know where we are in the process of getting our mascot and a picture of what our mascot will look like.
Okay, so there are 2 questions that I get everywhere. One question is, when are we going to bring back the football team? It's amazing to me the number of times that question is asked to me, and I walk around that one gently. But the other one they asked, when are we going to have the mascot? So here's the deal, what I know, and Beth, correct me from the back. You gave me some notes on this, and I inadvertently left them back there. So what I understand is we had this massive appeal. People wrote. We got, I think, 7. A group narrowed them down to 7, and now they got them down to 4, if I'm correct. They're in the process. This is a whole thing that I didn't know about. They got to go out and look at copyright issues. They got to look at licensing issues. They have to create a model of this and to figure out how it has to be vetted through these agencies outside of us to make sure we keep the copyright on it. My goal, and I have articulated an expectation, that I would like to have an image by the end of this academic year. Because the reality is, we've been talking about a raptor, and we got great shirts that say raptor on them, but what does a raptor look like? You know, because I'm ready to get some gear on, right? So that's exactly what we're working on. Did I summarize that well, Beth? All right, thank you. So Beth's shop is kind of in charge of that, and hopefully by the end of the semester, we will have a visual representation of what a raptor looks like. You're welcome.
All right, we have another question from online. This is from Kay Ahmed.
Okay.
And she wants to know, what is the driving vision of the college and the urgency in decision making that has administrators disregarding student, faculty, and staff input in addition to identified best practices from professional organizations?
Yeah, I don't know if that was a question or a statement, right? Yeah. So first of all, I would invite Kay to sit down and have a conversation with me, because I've come to learn that there are multiple statements and comments actually in a question is that. But I'll speak very simply to a couple things I think are important. One is, what's the vision, I think is what she said. The vision is in the college's strategic plan. So I was going to reference this later, but I think it's actually in here. Vision statement. So ironically, it starts off with a sense of urgency for the future. Montgomery College will be a national model of educational excellence, opportunity, and student success. Our organization will be characterized by agility and relevance as it meets the dynamic challenges facing our students and community. So a few words I would draw from that. There's the idea of sense of urgency for the future, kind of going to a point we talked about earlier. The times are changing, and they're changing around us. And I prefer to be an active verb instead of a passive verb. How do you get ahead of that in such a way that you're able to create the change you want to see rather than always reacting to the change that other people put upon us? I mean, we look at right now, the higher education agenda for the large part in this country, unfortunately, is being driven primarily by funding entities. Large grant-making entities that are saying, we think this is what you should be doing, we will fund it, and since public dollars are going down in terms of support for higher ed, and they are saying we will help fill the gap, we will help fill the gap if you do these things the way we say that you should do them, right? That's the dirty little secret that's happening right now in higher education. So I'm of the opinion that I never liked somebody to tell me what to do. My father would tell you that I've had this problem since I was a child. And if you talk to my beloved, she would say that she has learned that you do not tell me to do something. You created an expectation that I should do it, and somehow I respond to that, right? So the idea here is that with the sense of urgency for the future, we're going to be this national model. If you want to be a national model, you have to set the pace, right? You can not only always respond to the pace, but you have to be agile as you meet the dynamic challenges, things that are constantly in a state of flux around us. How do we begin to respond to them? I would offer to the question, there are going to be times when we are going to disagree as an institution. And I have no problem with disagreement. What I have problems with is that when people don't feel valued or their opinion was not valued in the process. So if that is a perspective, we need to have that conversation. If we're having processes where people's opinions don't feel valued. That being said, that we all have opinions and experiences that we bring to the table. I respect what happens in the classroom. I also respect what happens in the admissions desk, what happens in our facilities on the third shift, what happens at the response center. I respect all of those people's experiences. But I also expect that my experience and my background is respected as a part of trying to provide leadership and that of the people who are charged with that. Very few people that I know move into leadership roles and they had this easy route to it. They typically had to go through a little bit to get to it, and they have some experience they bring to it. So let's try to value everybody's experience and story in that and figure out how we get to the next level in a way that allows us to feel respected and valued as an institution. The other thing that I would offer is that while everyone is entitled to an opinion, everyone is entitled to offer that opinion, and we should have multiple spaces and places for that to occur. I believe adamantly, and I've said this from the moment I walked in the door, if you're going to be held accountable for the decision, you need to be able to make the decision, plain and simple. So for me, when I have to have a conversation about the workforce development and continuing education's fund balance and understand what they're doing to help to support any number of different things, the person who I'm going to call about that is George Payne. George is held accountable for that, so he needs to be able to make the decisions as it regards to that. I'm not going to come in at the end of the day, more often than not, and tell him what to do. I'm going to help him say, here's the perspectives that I think might be important, but he's going to tell me that, and I expect him. Now, any good administrator, though, who's in that responsibility is going to want to make sure they come from an informed place when they make the decisions that they make. So therefore, they should be bringing multiple people into a conversation. But there are always multiple opinions, right? And at the end of the day, the person who's going to be held accountable for it has to discern those opinions. They have to figure out what's the best piece of wisdom they have about it, what's the best decision that they're willing to be held accountable for, and make that decision. That is not always an easy process. It's not one where everybody feels good at the end, but I'm hopeful that we create an environment where everybody feels that they have the opportunity to contribute to a decision-making process and feel valued in that. So I would offer, if she doesn't feel comfortable talking to me, have somebody she can talk to, because I'd like to unpack that question, statement, a little bit more to understand where it's coming from.
Our next question is from here in the room.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Pollard.
Hello.
My name is Erin Marcinik, and I'm a counselor here at the Germantown campus. And my question is about the website. And if we are in the process, I hear rumors that we're improving it. And I just want to know where we are in that process. And if we have thought about hiring a webmaster or something like that to help it become even better.
Thank you, Erin. You know, we actually do, and I just had an update on this. Let me see if I can call through my memory banks on this. We are in the process, we just put together a plan over the next year to be able to figure out how to do the website and how to do that. But I see Beth Holman standing up, to which all of this somehow reports to her. I'm correct. Can you come forward, Beth, or just, because instead of you trying to tell me the answer, just answer it? Thank you.
Okay, I'm Elizabeth Homan. I'm the Director of Communications, if you don't know me.
Elizabeth.
Hello, everyone. Website redesign, it's an effort that's happening between the Office of Communications and IT. We have to do it collaboratively. IT have the technical expertise, and our office is looking at it from the design and communications perspective. What we're going to do this time is we are going to start with research. So as opposed to, we know that we need to switch the colors. We know that now that we've identified new colors, we know we need to switch those. And but we didn't want to simply just flip a switch and make everything just purple and silver and black. We thought it would be best to start and look at overall the whole website, what needs to be done in terms of usability. So we're going to start with research and do usability testing. We want to know what's working, what's not working, and how we might rebuild it to better serve the college community. Because we have a lot of questions additionally, which also look at the portal. We have MyMC. So how are people using the portal? How are people using the website? And how can we then build a website that will address both of those needs? So we're working with IT. I do know that IT is looking at also MyMC down the road of some changes to that. And our plan is to spend the next 6 months or so doing research usability testing and then start looking at how we would then build the website. So we're looking at 2014. Take our time, make sure we do it right. And we will be soliciting input from people, and we'll be asking for some people to serve and on a group that will look at the website as well.
I think related to that, what would be a great example of governance is the Student Services Council could look at that from a student services perspective, and not in a detailed list of 100 items, but and 10, here are the 10 big things that we think are important about the website that need to be enhanced, and submit that through governance and allow that to get that feedback to this group that's going to be working on it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the people who use it the most should be able to give the feedback about some future directions, what the big gaps are. So thank you for the question, Erin.
All right, we have about 10 minutes left,
Okay.
and I have an online question from Julie Foster.
Okay.
She would like to know, I would like to hear Dr. Pollard's reaction on how the governance process is going and what her expectations are for how governance can better become a true partner in the business of running MC.
Great question. Thank you, Julie. One of the things that's interesting, I told people last year when we started the new governance process, I think my exact words, it's going to be a hot mess for a year. And now I might extend that to a year and a half. Because we're trying to learn how to navigate a new system that is much more complex than the system we had before, where there is not always clarity about roles and expectations. Even the example right here that I just gave, here's a great opportunity to take something into the governance system. We have not always understood how to get things into the system, and more importantly, how we get things out of the governance system. So I think we're navigating some of that. I'm also interested in trying to have greater understanding about what is governance. I had someone the other day raise an issue with me, and I said, well, that's not really a governance issue. And they said, kind of looked at me, why not? It's decision making. I said, but it's decision making around a personnel issue. That's not a governance issue. And I went on to have another conversation with someone else who brought up another issue. I said, and they said, well, you know, this decision was made that we're going to do this, and now we're being asked to contribute to how it should be done. I said, but that's governance. That really is governance. It's the idea of being able to say, here's an example of something that the college is moving in this direction, but rather than simply saying, we're going to lay out a course about how we're going to do it, we're bringing people to the table and asking them to contribute to what this looks like for the organization. So it was a very interesting conversation. I think we're going to have lots more of those over the next couple of years as we try to figure out how the system is going to mature, what it's going to look like, how we put things in and how we put things out. I think the other thing we're continuing navigating, the first time you do something through, you're constantly in a state of revising it. So I've received in the last couple of months revisions to the system from the College Council. I just got one the other day. I'll be approving that. The reality about this is that we have to think very thoughtfully then about how we can assess something that's in a constant state of movement, right? So we've got to figure out at some point we're going to say, okay, we're going to leave this alone for a year so that we can put the system through and figure out what it looks like. I think going to the second part of Julie's question, I believe that governance should work hand in hand with the institution in terms of decision making. This is the way in which every member of the college community has the ability to contribute to the way in which something is going to operate, that being our institution. There are certain things that are not a part of governance because there are personnel and direct management issues. But I think the part that's challenging for us is that we don't quite know, and we're working through what things are management decision and what things are governance. And we're working through that and asking the important questions about it. Is this going to continue to be a little bit messy? Probably so. Will we have a better system, I think, that will allow people to have greater engagement? I believe so. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to continue to assess the program to make sure that it's actually delivering what we say it's going to deliver. But I remain convinced that it's the right one. We had the opportunity to have people engaged from all sectors of the institution. We will have the opportunity to have all campuses and WDC&E connected. We have the opportunity to ensure that every employee group has a voice in governance. And more importantly, there are functional issues that we are going to be able to respond to and have everyone at the table to talk about that. That to me is an important conversation.
Okay, we have time for probably one or two more questions, two at the most. This is an online question. It's anonymous. You want it?
Go ahead. I'll see if I'm going to answer it.
All right. Why are there different levels of scrutiny for different employees with regard to performance, expectations, and competence? How do we resolve this?
So yet again, another statement, not quite sure that's a question. It's very difficult for me to answer that because I don't have enough context for the question. There should not be different levels of scrutiny. There should be different levels of expectation. That I would offer. Every employee of the organization should go through a performance assessment. Every person in the organization should get feedback about their performance. Every person in the organization should be able to develop a development plan to help them be the best employee that they can be and feel fulfilled and valued within the organization. I would also argue that to whom if you have a higher level of expectation, there probably is going to be a higher level of scrutiny. I guarantee you, everybody at the college community, I'll say 90% of the college community has expectation and a level of feedback about my performance. Guarantee you. But I am a high-level person at the organization, highly visible. People have lots of things they can say or don't say, and I have learned how to filter that. But the part that's important about that is that everybody has that opinion, and ultimately for me is to figure out what are the best parts of that, how I begin to address it, how I move that into my own professional development plan, how do I give that feedback as I speak with my supervisors, I have them, the Board of Trustees, about my performance. There is that level of high level of expectations and high level of accountability. I think the same thing goes across the institution for every employee, regardless of where they are. They have depending on where you are, there's greater scrutiny. Have no idea, there's no doubt about it. Because if people feel that you have a lot of responsibility, they want to hold you accountable for it. The question is how we have processes to get the appropriate feedback. I'd be happy to hear more about that question, because I'm sure there's more to that. This is why I typically don't do anonymous questions, because you see the two, I'll leave it down. Okay.
All right, we have time for one more question or maybe some closing remarks, whichever you would prefer.
How about a little bit of both? I'll be shorter in my next response.
All right. This is a long question. I'm going to shorten it way down.
Okay.
You mentioned it. You're going to the Black, Brown, and College Bound Summit. You're going to be looking at the completion gap for male, Latino, Hispanic, and African American students. What efforts would you like to see the college implement to address this issue for us?
You know, for me, what's very important about this is that you have to name the problem. I am more and more convinced, and why I'm excited to go to this conference is to look at how other organizations have started to name what the issues are, to really uncover them within their organization and have very deliberate conversations about them. The program that I mentioned earlier, the Boys to Men program that Gus, I'm blanking on his last name, Griffin does at the Rockville campus is phenomenal, but that program requires a lot of work. This is sitting down with a group of young men every week and having conversations with them, having individual mentors who are having conversations with them. If we can do the success that they're able to demonstrate with that program, how do we replicate that? So for me, we can have boutique programs that have excellent feedback and excellent results. At the end of the day, the real benefit of a program like that is how you scale it so that we can have the benefit of students at every campus experiencing that. So I'm very interested to hear how other institutions are doing that. How do they use data to make the decisions that they make? How do they begin to really have the difficult conversations with students, with employees about success? How do you talk about culture and environment? How do you have conversations about looking at who you hire to ensure that you have a representative employee group that allows someone, a student, to be able to see it themselves at every level of the organization? That's a serious conversation you have to have. And more importantly, do you have the courage as an organization to come up with the solutions? That to me is why I'm attending this conference and look forward to that. So maybe I'm supposed to parlay this into a closing statement. More and more, I have this values card thing that every week I'm supposed to pull out a card and work on, and it's this value. And for the last, I didn't change the card. All last semester was mindfulness, to be in the moment, to be thoughtful about what's happening around me, how to be fully connected, to connect the dots. The other day, I pulled out, so I thought it was time to change because I'm kind of working on that one. This one I pulled out was courage. And I said, well, what's the Lord trying to tell me now? But I realized courage is not about being so brave that you have to be in front of everything and leading it. Courage, for me, is asking the questions that need to be asked sometimes. Courage is how to put the right people in the right space, even if you're not there, to ensure that they can get the work done that you need to have done. Courage, ultimately for me, is making sure that as an institution that I take on the hard questions when they come, but also at the same time create the silent, small spaces for real work to occur that might need to happen that would not traditionally happen within the organization. So this next month or two, until I feel it's time to change cards, I'm going to continue to work on courage, and I hope that each and every one of us, as we continue to think about the future of our organization and where we're moving and the trajectory and the urgency and the vision that we're working on, that we all have courage and doing the hard work. So thank you all for being here today. I tried to stay out of the light, Francine. Did I do all right? I did all right? All right. Thank you all very much. Take care and have a good one.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pollard. And thank you to everybody here in the room for your questions, and those of you online. Now, we have a couple of big things coming up. We have another town hall meeting coming up soon. We also have the President's State of the College address coming up. Please keep an eye on the President's Quarter Monday message and also Inside MC online for information about where and when both the next town hall and the State of the College address will be held. You can also follow us at new.livestream.com/Montgomery College Live to get updates and follow us on live Montgomery College web events. For Dr. Pollard, for everybody at Montgomery College Television, we appreciate your participation in today's town hall.